Hello and welcome everybody to the Teal Tool webinar. We're waiting 1 or 2 minutes for all attendees to join us. We'll start very shortly. Thank you. Okay, we are ready. So welcome again to this Teal Tool webinar. This is organized by the World Energy Meteorology Council together with the Inside Climate Service. We'll tell you more about these two companies. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers, the main organizers of the event, Elena and Caroline at the communication and branding section at the World Energy Meteorology Council, and Elena at the Inside Climate Service. My name is Alberto Troccoli. I'm the director of WEMC, the World Energy Meteorology Council, and the CEO of ICS, Inside Climate Service. So to go into a bit more detail, the World Energy Meteorology Council is a non-profit company based at the University of East Anglia, and WEMC develops the Teal tool, which we are presenting, and supports global research policy dissemination in weather, climate, energy, and other sectors. Inside Climate Service is a company founded in 2021 as a spin-off of the University of Padua and WEMC, and it's based in Padua. ICS develops and commercializes operational climate-based products such as the Teal tool and climate risk indicators. So moving now to Teal, I'm going to show you and present a little bit the background, where it all started and why it started. So the vision of Teal was several years ago, many years ago, about having a tool that allows to display and visualize complex and inaccessible data to many people. The purpose was for a tool that is intuitive and accessible to non-specialist users in an easy way. What was also lacking was the integration of climate, energy, and other societal indicators into such a simple tool. Our principle, we were inspired by this principle, which is if data is not accessible, it's not useful. So on that basis, we looked around. As you can see here, there are various options, and we wanted to take these options and build on them. One of them was, in particular, the European Climatic Energy Mixes that was developed under the Copernicus Climate Change Service by our team. And it started as a technical tool, which was really useful, but perhaps not really accessible to a wider audience. That's why a few years later, we had thought that perhaps we should involve other types of audiences in the development of such tools. And this is what we did. So we went out and co-developed the new version of this visualization, which was going to become Teal, together with students from high schools in the UK in particular. So this originated into the award-winning C3S Copernicus Climate Change Service EduDemo, Educational Demonstrator, which is shown here. Like I said, it was developed with the high school students and teachers over several months and tested at schools, as you can see from the photos. And we ended up with something that we regard as a simple, elegant interface for broader impact, which is accessible to experts and non-experts. So this was essentially the birth of Teal. The design is distinctive and modern, incorporating the teal color. That's where the name comes from. And this is a reflection of the simplicity of the Teal user journey. So how the Teal has evolved is displayed in this slide. where we see the first steps in 2019 with the CTS Edu demo, which I just presented. Then we moved on to more specialized developments with industry and operations focus. And together with Nell in particular, we developed a weather and climate data version of Teal. So at the moment, we have various versions, as you can see here. But officially, actually, in 2021, we launched the public version of Teal, the one that you see on the web now. Obviously, in a previous live, I can't remember which version we are at the moment, but 2021 was when it was launched after several years of development. Then in 2022, we worked with the WMO, the World Meteorology Organization, with a focus on policy. So I won't go into all the details here, but just to show you that we have various foci for the use of Teal, so policy, research, operations, advisory, and also in time, we added new indicators, starting from climate, and then we added energy data. Later on, also few food security indicators and other, more recently, also health indicator and other sectors. So the Teal tool capabilities are expanding all the time, and we're very proud of these developments, as we will also show with the presentations later by my colleagues. But before moving to the next slide, I also want to really acknowledge the support over the years by especially the European Commission through several European projects. These are mentioned here, Secli Firm or Focus Africa across EU. And Copernicus Climate Change Service with the Edu demo, and C3S Energy, an application which is being launched shortly, as well as the World Meteorology Organization. So we've been very lucky to work with such organizations and many partners, which I'm not able to mention all here, but we interacted at many levels with many organizations within and outside of our organizations. The program for today is, after my presentation here, we move now to my colleague Penny, who's going to present the Teal platform, vision architecture with demo of core functionalities. And later, Christian, my other colleague, will present custom features for the Focus Africa project. So we'll then finish with the Q&A and wrap up. In terms of house rules for the webinar, you're welcome to type your questions at any time in the Q&A tab, and we'll address them at the end of the session after the presentations. The webinar is being recorded, and a recording will be made available along with the slides after the event upon request. Enjoy the webinar, sit back, learn, engage, and we're really glad you are here. So I'll hand over to my colleague Penny now for her presentation. Thank you, Penny.
Many thanks, Alberto. I'll just share my screen first. So hello, thank you for joining the webinar today. My name's Penny Bowman, and I'll be giving you, as Alberto said, an overview of the variations of Teal that are publicly available currently. So again, as Alberto said, Teal is designed to be easy to use, visually appealing for users, and the different versions of Teal have been developed by a diverse team, including software engineers, data scientists, educators. So all looking at different aspects and functionalities of the tool. The original version of Teal was obviously designed to raise awareness and provide data and visualization of climate change and related energy issues. And subsequently, the new versions have carried that idea forward, so for a range of different sectors. And here I'll specifically look at the WEMC Teal tool, our public version, free to use tool, updated daily with new data. the World Meteorological Organization Energy Atlas, which is looking at future energy resilience. Western Central Africa Teal. So this came out of a project looking at changes under climate projection scenarios for climate variables and energy indicators in the region. And then the NL Foundation Teal. And this was one of the first variants of Teal, and it included a range of socioeconomic indicators and other data that was relevant to the NL Foundation. So here we go. The initial view when you first arrive at the public Teal link is a YouTube guide, and this gives an overview of basic functions. So clicking away from the window gives the view of the interactive globe. I'll go through the various icons and functionality of the interface. So first, the globe. This visualizes historical data, so you can rotate and zoom to look at different parts of the world. And in the bottom left, there are some orientation buttons, so you can get back to the initial globe view, zoom in or out, and then you can also download the data on the map. So with no areas highlighted, this downloads all regions into a CSV file. The button on the right is to search for a particular region. I'll come back to that in a minute. On the bottom right, the slider can be used to pinpoint a time period to show that in the historical data, and the sequence can be played through or paused and stepped through individually. And then the color bar at the bottom right indicates the scale on the map data. So hovering over the color bar gives the range of values for each color more clearly. So there are different variables that can be selected at the top left. So we have temperature, precipitation, wind speed, solar radiation, and carbon dioxide emissions on this public version. So by selecting a region on the globe, or by looking for a region in the search function, you can produce a chart with time series of historical, observed, and future climate scenario data for the region. So each element of the chart can be toggled on and off within the chart legend to make it clear whatever you're particularly looking at. In addition to selecting the variable, there are selectors for spatial scale. Illustrated here is a second administrative region set, and then temporal resolution as well, from daily to annual data. So the historical data here is from ECMWF reanalysis, era 5. We usually have that on the tool around a week behind real time. The projections are CMIP 5 and also some temperature observations from the Climatic Research Unit crew. So going back to the chart, using cursor and holding the button, you can zoom in to the time series, and then using the minus sign on the chart, zoom out again. Also, data or image from the chart area can be downloaded using the menu illustrated here, with the output in various formats. So again, selecting CSV format, we can see that. Hovering over any region on the chart on that, over a data point gives a small window called a tooltip, which gives data values and other information. More information is also available, the 3 lines on the top right, and that also brings up some other resources, links to background information on the tool, references, and contact information. So one addition for the public tool made more recently has been a chatbot, which we call the Teal bot. So it has some additional features, so the same charting as the main tool, and some additional statistics. So it's really meant as an introduction to get people started exploring the data we have available And the Tealbot gives easy access to the same data as in Teal, and also can be used to investigate these additional kind of ways of visualizing. So the Tealbot is started by clicking the icon on the top right next to the 3 lines, and the window appears with an initial explanation of options. So choosing an option, so temperature chosen here, and inputting a region, used Spain as an example. Then there are also other options, such as comparing 2 regions. So just to illustrate that on the chart, and the chart has the same functionalities as the main tools for zooming, downloading images or data. Just to illustrate, it can do that in different formats. So back to the main menu, and some additional types of analysis. So there's a comparison of climatologies for precipitation, for instance, from 2 historical periods. This is for the whole globe. Another possibility is to show climatologies by month for precipitation and temperature with similar chart functions again. So you can toggle the different aspects of the chart. And then the buttons at the top of the Tealbot window, they're to allow you to return to the startup menu easily. And then obviously things like contact details, frequently asked questions, and to access further information. Of course, to close the window and then return to the main tool. So to move to the other publicly available tools, this illustrates a Teal version used in the WMO Energy Resilience Atlas, and it has indicators for hydropower in present and future scenarios. 4 indices were developed to look at how different climate hazards affected hydropower generation, and these were used to calculate risk along with factors like capacity. So this was done globally and for countries with some hydropower capacity. And this is available free to use through a portal at WMO. The Western Central Africa teal, this shows an example of teal with including energy data. So this has solar and wind power for historical and future scenarios. And this was developed for a particular project. And again, it has all the same functionality to select spatial and temporal resolution, plot graphs, etc. for data in this region. So the Enel Foundation Teal. So in addition to standard climate indicators, this version of Teal included many socioeconomic and health indicators, such as illustrated here, the wellness measured in various ways. This also included other information, as Enel Foundation sponsored the Extreme E electric car races, which has an emphasis on raising awareness of climate change and related impacts. And they included on the tool were the locations of these races from the year of the project. So they are the pins on the map. So this version allowed, again, some additional functionality. Again, different types of data being visualized. I'll give you all the URLs at the end so you can have a look at all these different versions yourself. So during the development of Teal, as Alberto said, other additional capacity has been added and developed through collaborations. So for the Seckley Firm project, we looked at adding additional variables and also forecast visualization methods. So we looked at combining climatological reanalysis data, NERA5, and then weather or seasonal forecast data. So here's an illustration of the forecast, which goes out to 2 weeks hence, and has also the climatological information included. Again, similar functionalities in terms of chart rendering as for seasonal forecasts. There was something similar, but these show the monthly resolution forecasts and anomalies alongside climatologies as well. So these prototypes have been taken forward in other non-public versions of the tool, so inside climate services, Alberto mentioned. So these are the URLs of the publicly available tool versions. We can also put those in the chat. So just a reminder to have any questions you have in the Q&A, and I'll invite my colleague Christian to describe the developments made under EU project Focus Africa.
Thank you very much, Penny.
Thank you. Yes, over to you, Christian. Yeah, thanks. Christian is, as Penny mentioned, and thank you very much, Penny, for the very clear presentation. And now we're going to focus on one specific module or version, I should say, of Teal, which is for the Focus Africa project, which is not publicly available, as well as several others. Over to you, Christian. And like Penny said, also we encourage you to ask questions on the Q&A tab.
Thank you very much, Alberto. So, yeah, I've already been introduced, I think, 2 times now, so I will spare you. But my name is Christian Lautenwilson, and I do work for WEMC together with Alberto and Penny. So what I'm going to show you now is this special version of Teal. So you've already seen several versions now, but I will go a little bit more into depth with this specific version that was developed for the Focus Africa project. And it was basically a project where we tried to better give the end users in the southeastern Africa some specific information about, I mean, many things that could have an impact on agriculture, but especially also the onset and the cessation of the rainy season. Because normally when you see these seasonal forecasts, you can get your graphics from, for example, Copernicus data store. And in these cases, they are often on monthly basis. So an anomaly of it's going to be warm or it's going to be cold the next month. But a lot of these end users in these areas have a more general question of when does the rainy season actually start? So when should I plant my plants? So we did set up just to give you a bit of background here, we did set up this machine learning approach. So we had this random forest model that we used to predict the onset of the rainy season. So we took a lot of input data from both observed rainfall data and dynamical seasonal forecasts, observations of teleconnections indices and predictions of teleconnections indices, and we gave it all to the model. It built a lot of these decision trees. You can see an example of one down here at the bottom. And then it gave a lot of a forecast of the onset date from all these individual trees that we could then use as a probabilistic forecast. So that's a little bit of the background. We also have a paper coming on this, so you can keep your eye out on that. But I will now jump quickly here to the actual tool. So what you see here is this special version of Teal. A lot of you are probably already now in the free version that we have online, the tealtool.earth. But as Alberto mentioned, this is a special version developed for Focus Africa. It is not publicly available, so you are lucky to get a little sneak peek in behind the login gate here. So at first glance, this tool looks very similar to the other Teal tools. They all have the similarities of having the globe set up as the interactive system here that you can have a look at. And it also has the standard variables of temperature and precipitation and wind speed and solar radiation. But besides these standard variables, you can see below here, we have calculated some of these specific indicators that was of interest for this specific project. And then we've tailored the whole tool around being able to show this information in the best way for the end user. So we can start here looking at the onset, which was what I just described, which was very important for a lot of the local farmers. And if we click on it, you can see we get an overview of the area. So it's this SADC area in the southeast of Africa. We have it at country level, but we can still go higher resolution. So we can go to administration level 2, and we can actually also go even higher in this case, because there was a request to have it all the way up to even higher resolution. So here we see the individual areas, and if we press on them, we can now see the historical onset of the OND rainy season in this specific area. And we can see that it varies from year to year. But besides the historical data, we did build this seasonal forecast. So we also needed a way to show that. I'm just going to show you quickly here the latest forecast. So this is the forecast from September. The forecast comes out once a month, so the tool is updated in that sense. And you can see that for this specific area, we are predicting an onset around the 15th of December, but of course with some range of uncertainty. And if we compare that to the historical values, we can see that's a little bit later than normal for this specific area I think it's in Tanzania. But let me just show you a forecast from the year before. So I will just go here, because we did have calculated all the hindcast period, and we also have forecast running since last year. So we can just take July from last year. So you can see here we have the forecast of the OND onset from not only September as we had in the current one, but we also have it from July, August, September, October, November, and also December in this case here for the same area. So you can see the forecasts do vary a little bit. And what's more important is that on top of the actual box plot here, you can see there's a little number which indicates the skill. So you can see as we get closer to the OND season, the skill is also higher. So this gives the end user a way to follow on the forecast and see how it develops through time in order to get the most updated prediction of onset for that specific area. Besides having a onset, we also calculated secession. It looks similar. I can quickly show you. So it's kind of the same concept with these box plots. Of course, a little bit less skill because we are trying to predict secession of the rainy season, which happens later than the onset, obviously. So the skill is a bit lower this early before the secession actually happens. But we also did add some more standard indicators, such as precipitation, both at a 10-day average and a monthly. So I can just take a 10-day average here for this specific place. Yeah, you can see it's very much dry seasons to start with, but then we actually predict a little bit more rain here compared to the historical distribution you see in the background. And we did the same for temperature, which you can see here. So these are 10-day temperature forecasts, again with the skill on top, and again the historical variation in the background as the gray line here. So let me just close that again. So yeah, we had other statistics also for the historical period. We had a number of wet days and number of dry days calculated. These two are just different reference data sets, so TRIPS or IMSWEB. And again, this gives the historical overview of the different statistics for the different years. Another thing we developed for this specific tool was the option for the user to actually get a PDF. So let me just go back to the seasonal forecast here. We can just take the seasonal forecast. Oh, sorry. Yeah, oops. We just take the seasonal forecast from last year again, for example. Then the user has the option of not only looking here or getting the data, as Penny mentioned before, as these CSV files, for example, but the user can actually get a PDF bulletin here that gives information about the exact indicators that the user is interested in, So in this case, let's say we are interested in the onset date of the rainy season and maybe also the cessation, so we know when it stops raining again. Maybe we want 10-day precipitation, yes, and maybe this time we want monthly temperature. And we can take, I'll just take last year again, just to have a little bit more data here. And then we can press this button and the tool generates an actual PDF bulletin that the user can then open locally. And with the help of this bulletin, the user is then able to not only see the plot, but also get a description of each of the individual plots for this specific area of interest. Now I think I pressed somewhere in Mozambique this time, but it works for all the areas. And you can see it creates automatically a description of what we actually see in the plot. So you can see the median onset date for the O&D season is forecasted to be the 14th of December, which is in range with the climatological range, and so on and so on. And this works for all the different indicators here that we have selected. So you can see the precipitation is also down here. It also makes a reference to the skill, how good the skill is in these cases, and a reference to the historical data. So this is a very useful tool for both for the person using the tool directly, but also for sharing this information with potential end users that are maybe not accessing the tool directly, but still in this way can get the information from the Teal tool. And there's also a bit of methodology in the bottom that explains how we've done the calculations, what variables we've used, and so on, together with some references in order to understand what data sets are used and what methods are used. So let me just jump back here. I think that was that. So sorry, I might just jump back here. So this project was an EU project, but actually it ended up that this tool that we developed was still being used by one of the partners of the project that we work closely with, which is the TMA, the Tanzanian Meteorological Agency. That we have had, we even have a couple of guys from there working within WEMC now. So they are now using this as an actual operational service, and they are getting several things out of it. Not only do they get the availability to get it to use it as a service provision, so they get the actual forecast of the onset date, so they can use it in all these different sectors of agriculture, water, and so on. But they also use it internally for research purposes. So they are able to have the historical data, which allows them to have this evidence-based study of when did the rainy season actually start, which again then also allows them to compare with some of the other methods of onset dates that they have been using in-house, some other way of predicting and also some other way of defining the onset date. So they now have this data very easily available to the T tool and can do all of these studies in-house. So I think with these words, I will close again here and say thank you for listening.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Christian, and also Penny again. And this concludes the presentations we had prepared for you. It's not so usual, but we finished a bit earlier than expected, so we can have a bit more time for questions, and otherwise we can also end the webinar a little sooner and give you back a bit of time. But I also want to mention that what we shared is just a small proportion, as you also gathered from the presentations of Penny and Christian. We're developing several other versions. I mentioned some of them in my presentation, like the C3S Energy version and with the Cross EU project now. So many more. Also, the capabilities within the Focus Africa could only be shown to a certain extent. There is much more than the version of Focus Africa offers. I should also mention that we are continuing to develop the bulletin version, exploring the power now of AI, also to include the forecast that comes with the charts. So there's a lot of exciting developments happening with and around the Teal tool. So I see that some of you have started to ask questions, and that's really good. So I'd like to ask my colleagues, Penny and Christian, to turn on your cameras so we can address the questions. I know some of them are being addressed on the chat, but we also have an opportunity maybe to expand a little more. So starting from Charles, welcome Charles. I'm Charles from Tanzania. The Teal tool looks powerful. I just want to know if it can be freely downloaded, or is there a process to follow so as to access it? So maybe Penny, would you like to expand? You already gave a written response, but please.
Yes, certainly. If I let me know if I'm not specifically answering your question, but the 4 versions of Teal that I spoke about, and we've put the URLs in the chat and also the Q&As. These are free to access, and at the moment I have no registration. So you can take a look at those, download data, produce charts in the way I showed. But if you're asking specifically about the actual kind of code and the software, oh, that's okay. Thank you very much. I can see your response.
Okay, thanks. Maybe I can also add that the Teal tool is being designed for use on a desktop, not so much on a mobile application. Although we do have, I mean, it can be accessed through the web on a mobile application. It's currently is not scaled, but we are working on that. So one version will be available, but that's not the main purpose because we realize it's not going to be really easy to access all this information on a mobile app. So like on a phone. So that's why we keep it as a web tool. And like we said, some versions are freely available and others are behind a paywall. Don't know if Penny or Christian want to add anything to that before we move to the next question. Next question from Simone. Good morning. What is the spatial resolution of data? The one of ERA 5 or there are more granular data? Many thanks. So Penny has already responded.
Yes, maybe I can start here. So for public Teal, we use the gridded ERA 5 data as available from ECMWF, and we aggregate to regions at country and first administrative level. And we use the shapes provided by the natural earth, which are freely available to do this. But I should also add that for other Teals, we can use different shapes. So we have, for example, on the Focus Africa tool that Christian demonstrated, we have a second administrative region set as well. So this is something that we adapt for every new version of the tool.
Very good. I'd just like to also compliment by saying that in some cases we don't have the resolution of ERA 5 as in the projections, but then we do some downscaling. And the reason why we are presenting the data in as shape files rather than gridded data is both for accessibility issue, the speed also of the data download and access would be probably too slow with the gridded data, depending on the resolution, of course. But also many applications require averages over areas, over political areas, like provinces, like we are showing. That's one of the key reasons why we opted for this approach. But having said that, we actually also have versions where we show point-wise data, like observations. So the tool is really flexible in that regard. So moving to the next question, there is a question for Christian now. So Mohammed, thanks for the question. Wow, Teal is such an amazing tool. I'm researching urban flooding in Nigeria and would like to know how I can adapt the forecasting model using machine learning to my area of interest. Can you help, Christian?
I can, but probably it's going to be a relatively short answer to a relatively complex question. But I can explain what we did in our case. So we were predicting this onset date of the rainy season, and we started out by doing a lot of studies at looking at, first of all, how is the onset date defined. So we needed to be able to have a historical data set of when the onset actually happened. So I'm guessing something similar for urban flooding. There's probably some thresholds that needs to be met, or some river levels that needs to be met in order to you calling it flooding. And then from having done that, we started looking at what is then the correlation between when the onset in our case happens and some other important data set that we could think of. So first of all, of course, we knew that we had the dynamical models. So we used more than just ECMWS seasonal forecast system here. We used, I think we used 5 here at the end. So we had both Canadian and European systems mixed together. And then we also had all these observations of IOD and ENSO, because we could see from some other studies we did that there's a good correlation between the state of IOD and ENSO at specific times of the year, and then whether or not the onset is going to be late or early. So I'm thinking something similar could probably be done in this case. And then we also included some forecast of what is the IOD and ENSO actually going to be in the future, because we know that these big teleconnections plays a good role in when the onset date is going to happen, whether we have La Nina or El Nino, for example, can play a role. So in the case of urban flooding, depending a little bit on what exactly is trying to predict it, but if you try to predict it on a slightly longer range, you could do a mix of different observational and dynamical forecast data sets that you think are useful and important, and then use something, for example, like the random forest, where the random forest model itself is kind of able to give importance to the data sets, so the variables of that are most important to give a skillful forecast. So that's an option. I mean, I think it's probably a longer question that probably deserves a longer answer, but hopefully I gave an idea here.
Yeah, no, that's very good. Thank you. Maybe also I could ask Penny if you would like to expand a little bit on the work also that we are doing on Cross-EU, just to give an idea of the breadth of applications that we are exploring and that will go into the Teal future Teal version, or more than one version.
For sure, yes. Cross-EU is an exciting project for us. We're using Teal as part of a decision support system. So the idea is we will have this powerful tool for stakeholders and other users at the end of the project, which will encompass data from 8 different case studies, which are focusing on particular climate change hotspots in Europe. And these provide data for a huge array of different sectors. So they cover things like everything from heat mortality to energy changes. And this is for climate projections. And the aim is to provide a tool that users can use to look at climate risk and help with climate resilience.
Very good. Thank you, Penny. And we have several other questions here. Some are related simply to sharing the slides or presentations. So thanks, Luis and Paulos, for the questions. Yeah, we'll tell you also the presentation and recording will be shared. We'll tell you more about that in the last slide that I will show in a few minutes. Then there was another question that was addressed by Penny. What is the meaning of teal? If I missed it, we mentioned it earlier, but as Penny says, the name is taken from the color of the background that gives the teal tool its distinctive look. Then moving on to other questions. Edward, thanks for the question. Are there any plans to expand the Teal into offshore usage, e.g. to help assess the impact of increased wave and storms on offshore wind farms? Feel free to jump in, Penny or Christian, but I'll start. There are no immediate plans, although we did have some discussions with people interested in this application. So in principle, there is nothing stopping the Teal tool to be used for offshore. Again, it can be done with shapefiles, depending on the region or more localized data. So the main point that so far the request has been rather limited, mainly because of the more limited use of offshore wind farms than onshore wind farms, but that's changing with time as well, which is very good to notice. They don't see any sign. If you want to contribute to the answer. Yes, Christian, please.
No, I just wanted to highlight what you said there, because I think it's very important to underscore that the Teal tool itself is now in a state where we can tailor it to almost any shapefile you can think of. So if you are very interested in your own backyard, in theory, we could the shapefile for your backyard, or in this case, the North Sea or any other sea you're interested in for wind. So there's nothing per se stopping the tool from showing this data, but as Alberto say, we just haven't had the requests.
Yeah, thank you, Christian. Yeah, and importantly, like Christian says, we can in principle show basically everything. It's just the approach that we're using. We always in the back of our mind, the designers and so on, we start from simplicity as much as possible. Of course, there is obviously complex data that is being conveyed, but we always ask ourselves how we can simplify things before we do this. Right, moving to the next question. Guadalupe, thanks. Hello, congrats for this amazing tool. I would like to know what products are included in solar radiation. Are direct and diffuse radiation available in Teal? If not, are you thinking to include them? They could help a lot PV generation forecasting. So yeah, thank you for the question. And maybe Penny, you were going to address this?
Yes, indeed. So I'm just looking for the question again. If I understand correctly, the question, there's one product for the solar radiation included in the Teal tool, and that's the global horizontal irradiance. There's more information actually in the tool. If you go to the extra information in the about section, it will describe the variable in more detail. But basically, it's the total amount of solar radiation received by a horizontal surface on Earth. So that's the only one we have a standard, but again, in theory, we can include what is useful to people. So we have different variables on different versions of the tool.
Yeah, thanks, Penny. Yeah, so like Penny says, in principle, there's no issue with variables. We have actually, Penny showed one version. You might have noticed that includes many more, several more variables. So we can include any type of variable really, and we can include any type of data. We just normally refer to the most used and recognized and most of all accurate data, at least in terms of the scientific literature. And so, but again, we could use any data, observations or gridded data, rasters, any type of data. Next question, a bit broader. I think I maybe mispronouncing your name, Ioannis Amat. Thanks for sharing this wonderful webinar. I would like to apologize for coming late. I would simply like to find out the importance of the Teal tool apart from climate change. Very important question. So I would like to ask maybe Christian, you want to start, and then Penny?
I think you already answered the question, no, Alberto, at the beginning. I mean, I know it's a person here who was late, so, but I think in one of your first slides you said that having all this climate data and having all these projections of climate and weather forecasts and all these things, if they are not available to the actual end users, they are of no value, no matter how good the data is. So I think it's a very important step in all weather and climate related science, that we can have a lot of good models, we can have a lot of good data, but if it's not available to the people that actually has to use it in an easy and accessible way, then it is of very little value, only to us that sits and looks at it and enjoys it. But so I think that kind of goes back to your answer, sorry, your note from before, Alberto.
Okay, thanks, Penny. Christian, sorry, and Penny, would you like to add something?
Yeah, only to add really that although we have projections, so of course we're looking at all these variables in the future for climate change. I mean, one of the purposes of Teal was to enable educators, so teachers, high school students, to look at or easily access meteorological and climate data. So you can also look at, say, there's an item in the news about a heat wave or a heavy rainfall event, and then students can go back and use the Teal to look at data and see how different variables correspond, or look at the same thing in different regions and analyze the data, but simply, so it helps them to do that.
Wonderful. Yeah, and also one of the slides that Penny presented was about weather forecasting, which technically is not part of the climate change kind of use. So just to say that they can be much broader than climate change, and also with the tool we developed with NL Foundation, although he had scenarios, we also touched on various indicators, well-being, and various others that are more social related indicators, and so again, the Teal tool can host all kinds of data. Basically, the main thing is the globe. They represent something geographically spread. In fact, yeah. So there is, like we said, many other developments happening now, particularly across EU, which is going to expand the breadth of the use. We'll take the last question from our friend Omari, and up to you, Christian and Penny, who wants to address this. So thank you for all the outstanding presentations. The content was highly valuable and informative. The Teal Focus Africa has been extremely useful for weather forecasting support, especially in rainfall onset and cessation. Could you please share whether there are any plans to expand its coverage to other regions across Africa?
I can start if you want, Alberto.
Yes, please.
It is something that we have, for this specific tool version of Teal, it is something that we have discussed a couple of times. But I think in this discussion, we've also come to the conclusion that we need to do a little bit more of analysis on the local conditions, because of course it is, I mean, Africa is a very big continent, so it's very important that we actually do have a full understanding of how the rainy season acts in different places and so on, in order to broaden this out to be covered in covering more countries than just the SADC region that I chose there. Even within this little region that I showed, or little in the region I showed, there are still quite a lot of differences. There are bimodal areas where it rains twice a year, and there are unimodal where it rains once a year. So there's already a lot of thought that has gone into these areas, and I think there are even trimodal areas existing in Africa. So I think we would have to think a little bit more about it, but it's something we've discussed before, and I think maybe in the future we will expand it to cover more, if not all, of the relevant part of Africa.
Okay, thank you. Penny, please.
Yeah, maybe I can just add that the Focus Africa was an amazing project to work in, and that was partly because we had partners in the region who were part of the development of the tool, and so we had we involved the stakeholders and users from a really early stage to make something useful as a project deliverable. So, and that would be amazing to do that with other institutes and people in other places.
Wonderful. And so that takes us to the end of the Q&A. We are right on time. I'd just like to acknowledge also the message from Jafar saying, thanks for the presentations. I love it. That's a great way to end. And I just have one final slide where we are going to tell you a bit more about what happens next. So we are planning another webinar on Teal. Next time, the focus will be on education, much more than what we've done today. This was a bit more specialized for special use on research projects or operational aspects, like with the Focus Africa Teal. But we also work with universities and high schools, like we said before, and that will be the focus of the next webinar, which is planned for the end of November. So please keep an eye on that. Then please contact us if you'd like to receive the presentations and recording of this webinar. They contact us, although we do also have your contact details from registration, so we'll be in contact also through that channel. And we encourage you to sign up to our WEMC newsletter to receive updates about our next webinar and more. Then we'd like also to really ask you to help us improve our next webinar by completing the post-webinar survey, which will appear straight after the webinar. So please take a few moments to fill out just a few simple questions. Your feedback is very important to us. And then we also share updates on especially LinkedIn these days. And of course, don't forget to play with the Teal tool at the link below here. And before ending, I would like to thank the many people who have joined the webinar. We had very many registered people. We're very honored to have you had here at this webinar. So thank you for attending. And again, thanks to the main organizers, Elena and Caroline at the World Energy Meteorology Council, and Elena at the Inside Climate Service. And of course, thanks to my colleagues, Penny and Christian, for presenting and answering all your questions. It's been a pleasure presenting this webinar to you, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Goodbye now.